it's Yaz, and today I'm back with the world's tiniest paint set to tackle my second ever Bob Ross painting. This time things got a little tricky. Let's dive into the challenge. So first off, this tiny paint set gives you every color except white. That meant if I wanted to lighten any of the colors to create highlights, I was out of luck. Normally white is the go-to for mixing lighter shades, but without it, I had to get creative with how I used the colors I had. Blending was an adventure because with watercolors, the more water you add, the lighter the color becomes. But even then, it was a challenge to create the kind of soft blends I'm used to with acrylics. I don't use watercolors often, so this was a fun challenge, but watercolors definitely have a mind of their own sometimes, and on such a small scale, every stroke felt like a test of patience and control. Without white to tone things down, I had to be really mindful of how I mixed colors and the amount of water I used to create softer shades. Every mix was a delicate balance, and it added to the unpredictability of the entire process. Now let's talk about this tiny paintbrush. Even though it's only my second time using it, the bristles were already frayed. It's like trying to paint with a brush that's been through a lot of rough art battles. And the thing is, when you're working on something this small, the tiniest details make a big difference. Trying to get clean lines for the trees or the mountains with a brush like this was almost impossible. The brush would split and I'd end up with these random stray marks where I didn't want them. But instead of fighting it, I had to adjust my technique and work with what I had. I used lighter, gentler strokes to try and control the frayed bristles. And let's be real, sometimes the paintbrush just did its own thing. That's when I had to remind myself of Bob Ross's classic line,
"Don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents."
So yeah, this painting had its share of happy accidents. One of the biggest ways this project pushed me was skipping the pre-drawing. Normally, I always sketch out my painting first. It's my way of planning things out and making sure everything looks balanced before I start laying down paint. But this time, I went straight in with paint and no guide. This meant I had to trust myself a lot more. Every stroke was final, and with no pencil lines to follow, it was kind of like walking a tightrope. There's no erasing paint, so each decision mattered. Definitely made me slow down and be more mindful about where I was placing the paint. At first it felt a little nerve-wracking, but honestly it was freeing at the same time. Sometimes we get too caught up in planning and perfectionism, and this project forced me to let go of all of that. It was all about being in the moment, reacting to the paint, and making things work as they happened. Even though it was challenging, it was also pretty rewarding to see how things came together. It felt like a real exercise and trusting the process. Now, when it came to adding the details, the tiny brush really tested my patience. Trees, mountains, clouds, all the classic Bob Ross elements are tricky enough on a large canvas with a nice paintbrush, but on this scale and with a brush that's far from precise, let's just say it wasn't easy, but it was still a lot of fun. I had to work in short, light strokes to try and keep the frayed bristles from messing up the finer details. It took a lot longer than I expected. Normally, with a regular brush, I can get those trees down in just a few strokes, but with this one, I had to go over areas multiple times trying to get the shape and texture just right. Clouds and the bushes were probably the most forgiving part of the painting because they're naturally fluffy, so the frayed brush actually worked in my favor there. But the mountains, that was a whole different story. Getting those sharp edges and smooth transitions from light to dark was tough without being able to blend the way I'm used to. It was a real lesson in patience and precision, but by the end, I started to get the hang of it. The key was adjusting my expectations and embracing the imperfections. As I was painting this, I couldn't help but think about Bob Ross's approach to art. He was all about enjoying the process, and that really stuck with me during this project. There were so many little moments where I could have gotten frustrated with the limitations, the frayed brush, the unpredictable watercolors, the lack of white paint, but instead I tried to embrace those challenges. Bob Ross's philosophy of happy little accidents definitely applied here. I made mistakes, but instead of letting them ruin the painting, I found ways to work with them. That's the beauty of art. Sometimes it's not about perfection, but about finding joy in the process, even when things don't go according to plan. And here it is, my second Bob Ross painting with the world's tiniest paint set. Despite the challenges, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It pushed me out of my comfort zone and made me think differently about how I approach painting. Would I recommend painting with a set this small? small? Maybe not if you're looking for precision, but if you want a fun art challenge that forces you to let go of perfectionism, definitely give it a try. Have you ever tried to paint a Bob Ross piece? Let me know in the comments. And for more fun art challenges like this, click this playlist right here. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, friends!